down to Henley-on-Thames to the Bremont Watch Factory, having a kind of car and classic or coffee and cars morning. And I'm also meeting a guy called Max, who has a Lotus Esprit V8 that he's kindly agreed for me to have a look at and compare it to my car. So we've parked alongside. Let's go and have a look. So there you go, parked up next to my car. I've actually got two Esprit V8s. Sort of an earlier one is the silver one, and then one of the last ones produced in the UK, one of the last delivered in the UK from March 2003. The V8 is a 3.5 litre twin turbocharged engine that Lotus developed, and it's good for 350 horsepower, although when it was designed it was apparently capable of 500, but the gearbox probably wasn't up to it, so they decided to detune it down to 350 to make sure there are no issues with the gearbox. So we'll do 0 to 60 in about 4.4 seconds and can hit a top speed of 175 miles an hour. Now the V8 is actually a flat plane crank, kind of like Ferrari, so high revving rather than the kind of chugging V8s that you get particularly in the US. So there's 20 years between these two cars, 1983 and then 2003, and quite a lot of different designers have had their input. So the red one is obviously Giugiaro, who did the original styling on the S1 and then through to that particular model. So then Peter Thompson came along, created the X180 and restyled that, followed by Julian Thompson, followed finally by Russell Carr, who did a slight revision to give you this particular car. Now the particular revision that he did is really at the back. Here you can see the most obvious styling change that he added. Same tail lights that are on the S2 Elites. So Russell Carr now is head of design at Lotus. Julian Thompson and Peter Stevens have obviously had great careers, and Giorgetto Giugiaro is just El Maestro when it comes to car design. So what some people don't realise is that the Lotus Esprit was one of the last cars to have pop-up headlamps. Technically the actual last probably was the Corvette C5, because I think that production of that ran for another 5 months after this, after the Esprit. But the Esprit V8 was the last one produced in the UK. So the interior on these is obviously wildly different. I guess you can still recognise some elements of it. Obviously the basic format hasn't changed, but the finish and fit is very different. Different binnacle, different wheel, different seats. Probably a whole lot more comfortable. I'm going to try and sit in it in a moment, see if it's any easier than mine, but it doesn't look like it. Typically what happens when you get a car with more trim inside is that there's more things for my knees, particularly my left knee, to get in the way of. So just for the avoidance of doubt, no, I couldn't drive this car. So my left knee is indeed stuck between the centre console and the steering wheel. I guess, you know, I could use my other trick that I've done in my car of adding a spacer behind the steering wheel. I've added sort of about 70mm spacer behind mine. That can make a big difference. So it's a factory original car, and one of the things this has got is a mini disc player. Now, mini discs, for those of you who don't know, kind of came along with a flash in the pan and then suddenly they're nowhere again, but they promised to be the future. Sadly, they were not. So there we go, V8 still hot, despite the fact that we've been parked here for what, an hour nearly?
That's the Henley traffic.
Yeah. And it's just, there's not a great deal you can see of it, is there really? It's got the two banks and you've got the whole big sort of plenum on the top. Trying to see where the turbos are. There you go. Yeah, so that's got more than twice the power of the original, well, certainly of the original 2 litre and the 2.2 litre. Even in turbo form, it's not got as much power as this. So there's the 2.2 in the S3. Engine bay is a lot different. There seems to be it's a lot more room to work, but you know, it's not quite as refined, is it? You move back over to here. You've got nice kind of carpeting and a nice area to put your luggage. It all looks a little bit neater, but I imagine there's not a great deal of room to do anything without, you know, either disassembling all the sides or even dropping the engine out. This one's a Sport 350, which, just talking to the owner, there's a bit of difference. You know, there's kind of carbon fibre here and there, and it's got a different ECU map to the other V8, but fundamentally it's the same thing. So obviously there was a fair bit of engineering change going on over the 28 years of Esprit production, but fundamentally they're the same car. It's the same, pretty much the same car underneath. You think about Porsche 911, you know, it's been going for an awful long time, but actually it's lots of different cars. So between 76 and 2004, Porsche 911 changed fundamentally, I guess, at least 3 times in that period. Not just sort of styling changes, not just facelifts and revisions, but actual fundamental redesigns. So I just think it's great that, you know, whilst I'm a fan of the earlier cars and probably always will be, it's just great that they were able to keep the model going for so long, pretty much by just, you know, adapting the shape of things and, you know, sort of changing the underpinnings without changing the fundamental design of it. Thanks very much for watching. Please like, please subscribe, and leave me a comment. Tell me what you think of the two Esprits together, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.